afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Ed Carson here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Tuesday, November 5th, where we saw stocks bounce powerfully with the major indexes rallying today after pulling back to some key levels, Ed. And you and I were talking before the show. It almost feels like an ideal setup, but we do have this risk event tonight, and who knows for how many days that is going to be playing out with the
Yeah,
election.
absolutely. Nice move. We'll just have to see how the market reacts tomorrow morning and overnight. I want to take a look at Astera Labs, Intuitive Surgical, and Howmet Aerospace.
Okay, we'll take a look at those three stocks after we take a look at the major indexes. So the S&P 500 today up 1.2% by session's close. The Nasdaq up 1.4% on the day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1% on the day, and the Russell 2000 leading the way with a gain of 1.8%. So we'll go through these, Ed, starting with the S&P 500. This has been our strongest index over the last couple of months. And it looks like, in hindsight, that sell off on Thursday last week almost sets us up with a potentially ideal scenario here, because now we're bouncing and it's a lot easier to buy stocks in an uptrend after you get some sort of pullback and then some strength. So that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah, nice shakeout, bouncing off a key support. The S&P, Nasdaq, and Russell all retook their 21-day lines. The S&P barely, but they all did. Dow bounced off its 50-day line. But so you can see that all of these is sort of we're seeing a lot of indexes, a lot of stocks doing what the S&P has been doing, where pulling back to the 50-day line or the 21-day line. And there's a lot of things where there's downtrends that you can see right above a prior consolidation. Some of them are further out. I mean, they're not all identical, but yeah, there's a lot of setups there. It felt like a setup day. That doesn't mean, is it a setup day or is it a setup? I mean, we don't know. We'll have to see, because and look, the election, it could be, as you say, as you alluded to, it could be quite a while, especially if it comes down to, say, a state like Pennsylvania that may take a long time to count votes. And the House, we don't know how. So there could be a long time before we know. But it was a very strong day. I think that's the big thing. I sometimes talk about the Fed meeting being an earnings report for the market. Well, this is definitely an earnings report for the market. And we have the Fed starting tomorrow. So
And we have that. Yeah.
yeah, and we have that. So a lot going on, but very positive action today in the indexes and the leading stocks.
Mhm. Right. Okay. So, Ed, here's the question then. Uh, Obviously, there are so many scenarios that could play out for the market, and then you layer in all of these headlines. So there's a lot of cross currents here, a lot for investors to digest, a lot for the market to digest. But what are some of the scenarios that you're mapping out that are maybe a little bit more clean cut? Let's just say up versus down. It feels pretty clear. If we move up and we continue to add to that strength, that seems like a somewhat bullish scenario, I would say. But then if we move below these key levels that we have been finding support at, that's just from a technical perspective, that's damage that we don't really want to see. And at the very least means that there could be some more volatility and chop and potential head fakes. I guess there could be head fakes either way.
There could be head fakes either way. So I mean, I'd certainly suggest probably be cautious right at the open, and especially if the market moves and we don't really know the
Right.
outcome. If people are guessing, I mean, maybe it's one thing if people like sort of know and you have a pretty good idea who wins, but if you really don't know and we're just vibing a rally, or vibing a sell-off, I mean, you might just want to be a little more cautious there. And so
Right.
I think you just be a little bit cautious. You want to be ready. There are a lot of setups. You don't want to wait too long. It's always a
Yeah.
judgment call. You always look smart if you act and then everything works out. You look, foolish. So
Mhm.
again, I would just be more incremental. Probably people have
Right.
decent exposure. So it's like you don't have to go crazy here. At the same time,
Mhm.
if things go poorly, you can scale out, but you don't have to do it immediately. We definitely could see volatility overnight and tomorrow and for a few days. It could all end up very, very strong, very positive. It could be very negative. So you just got to be flexible, but not knee-jerk reaction either.
Exactly. Love how you put that, Ed. Totally agree. Incremental decisions. And if you want more on how all of this news is set to impact the market, leading stocks and industry groups. Make sure you check out our coverage on the homepage of investors.com. Ed, your article is going to be coming out around 5 p.m. Eastern, and then we're going to be adding updates to that into the evening. And thank you for leading the charge on that.
Yeah, and you're going to doing like mostly market reaction to news, or it's not going to be
Great.
like a deep dive in the politics, but talking about the futures, Bitcoin, things along that nature, and just following along during the evening.
Yeah, well, we appreciate all of the guidance to the IBD centric. We're gonna look at everything through the IBD lens, so that'll be awesome. All right, anything else about the indexes before we move on, Ed,
You know,
to some of
yeah,
the
I think we can
ETFs?
move on. We've
All right.
basically, well, it's all due to tomorrow and Thursday and beyond.
Exactly. Okay, so, were there any sector ETFs you wanted to
Let's
look at, or should we just go
just
straight to some stocks?
XLF, XLI,
Okay.
are a couple names. Just show them. I mean, it's setting up again, like a lot of the indexes, sort of pausing on the
Mhm.
21-day, 50-day line. I think XLI bounced off the 50-day. Just some names. So it's not just tech.
Mm.
So there's some nice potential moves. Again, if you're, especially if there's volatility, but you want to play it, there's nothing wrong with certain ETFs. There's one way to go at it, whether it's sector or market, rather than go with individual
Yeah.
names. So there we go.
I'm a big fan of that approach. And let's take a look at the 10-year treasury yield, and then we'll get to those three stocks. This is also something that is in focus. Is there any sort of interpretation here, Ed, that we should be aware of if we see a rise or a fall, what that might mean?
People have talked about a Trump trade for the stock market and also the bond yields, and they sort of counteract each other because it's kind of thing. And so if the bond market reacts with higher yields, that could impact the stock market. Like you have to think that. Today we actually hit a 4-month high and reverse lower, but it also has been riding the 10-day line. I mean, the uptrend in yields is very much intact. We have a strong economy. There was some more data today. There's a lot of things, but yeah, this one really could move things as well for the stock market going forward.
All right. Well, thanks for keeping an eye on that for us. Let's get to some stocks. Here's A Lab. Speaking of stocks you've been keeping on our radar, Ed, I know internally you've been making sure that we've been watching this one as it climbs back up the right side of this huge base. And look at this earnings reaction today here, up 37%. The results came out last night, correct, Ed? And up almost 40% today. That's huge.
Huge move. It was really strong earnings, really strong guidance. There was a 47% sequential gain in revenue. I mean, so really huge quarter breaking out of this huge consolidation. There was probably little handles on a daily or weekly you could find. But at this point, I mean, those who bought it when it was up 25%, hooray, they obviously, were obviously up on that. But I'd say at this point, you may want to wait and see if it pauses. I mean, it could be whether you want to wait a few days or see if it, forms more of a shelf or even a new base. If this is a real winner, you don't have to buy it on the first real breakout. This is going to have time after time, but the fundamentals look really impressive. I think it's now going to be, we're going to talk about it like we did in the first few weeks. We're going to talk about it when we talk about NVIDIA and the other leading AI chips. This is all of a sudden
Yeah.
back in that, back in the thing. And when you see that kind of growth, it's definitely something to watch. It may not be the right time now. I mean, some people could have definitely bought it, but it's like definitely should be on the radar and looking for opportunities to get into this name.
And it did cross above its highs from the first couple of trading days. So that is significant as well. Might be tougher to stay above that level, but we'll see. We shall see. I actually want to swing over super quickly to Reddit. This was a stronger IPO out of the
Mhm.
gate, but look at this one. It gapped up on earnings as well last week. This stock up a little more than 40%, pulled back for a couple of days, and then here we go off to the races again, up 12%. So perhaps some aggressive traders were looking at some short-term highs being cleared as a chance to initiate from an aggressive perspective. So you may wait for a full-on base here with A Lab, or just a couple of days of digestion, depending on how the stock acts and how aggressive you are. So things to keep in mind there.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of gap ups that have faded. So it's not thing. And obviously the
Right.
market plays a role. Reddit pulled back with the market a little bit and now took off again. So obviously so much is going to depend on the market. But yeah,
Well said. Absolutely, totally agree. Okay, let's take a look at Intuitive Surgical. This was added to Swing Trader today, Ed, up 1.5%. We got a pop on earnings here. This is a quality, institutional kind of stock that had been pulling back to its 50-day line, then moved out on earnings, and then it really tightened up ever since that report, Ed, and now trying to move out of that tight area today with that 1.5% gain.
yeah, relative strength line basically at highs. You know, it was sort of a de facto base it came out of, and now it's just above that, breaking the trend line in there. Just showing really good action. The fundamentals, you can see there's been a little bit of acceleration on this name. Yeah, as you say, it's just a quality name. You can see how tight it's been for quite a while. So this is just doing really, really well. And another advantage on this, and it's still reactionable, is that it's nice to have, again, it's nice to have some diversity away from that. And this is a little, maybe won't move as much if there's huge
Mm.
volatility, because of, medical tends to be a little more insulated from some of those things. Not that it would be protected, but it's just something in there, a growth name that isn't in tech. It's nice to have those opportunities as well.
That makes sense. Okay, let's round things out with a look at HWM. This is Howmet Aerospace. The Aerospace Defense Group, Ed, is now ranked number 37 out of the 197 groups that we track. So that's pretty good. And this feels like the leader in the space. We do have earnings coming up. This was our stock of the day today.
If this weren't for earnings and maybe the election, you'd probably be saying this was actionable here, off the 50-day line, above the 21-day line. I mean, looking really
Round
good.
number, right at 100, that century mark.
Round number. So we'll have to see. I mean, you didn't really want to play it with all that coming up beyond an options play, but just watch for this. You're right. It's absolutely the leader in this one. In fact, if it's not, it's arguably the top performing S&P 500 stock that's not AI related in some way. It has really done well.
Yeah.
Buying it off the 50-day line has often been the way to go. Just because there are some pullbacks it'll have here and there. Not that you couldn't have used breakouts as well, but definitely some pullbacks in there. So just really impressive performance, and
Mm.
it seems to be more like these equipment, and kind of Megans and the actual some of the actual giants. This one is definitely a huge leader.
So our earnings before the open or after the close?
I believe they're before the open, so
Okay.
should be a fun open for this company.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see how things go at the open. All right, Ed. We appreciate all of your insights, and everyone, please be sure to keep tabs on investors.com. And also, if you have the IBD app on your phone, we will be sending push alerts uh, here and there throughout the evening. So make sure to check that out for all the latest from IBD with the big headlines potentially to come. And tune in at 5 p.m. Eastern today. So, coming up in just a little over 30 minutes from now, we have our weekly Swing Trader Status Update show with our Swing Trader team, giving you an inside look at how they are positioned here and what is on their radar for this week ahead. So we'll see you then at 5, and then we'll see you in the morning on IBD Live. It'll be a fun show. We've got a lot to look at, from earnings, the market reaction to election headlines, and we will be there with you every step of the way in the first hour plus of the market open tomorrow. So see you then, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye now.